and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help you God. So help me God.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me here today. We are going to be having a great time. We've got a guest today. Oops. Unfortunately, I am a one-man show here, and I'm just going to take a second here real quick to make sure that everything's sort of moving the way it's supposed to. Okay. All right. In fact, let's get rid of JFK here just for a minute. All right. This is the second broadcast for the new podcast, and I am watching the chat over here. So if anyone does have anything to say, like if you can't hear me, in fact, I want to say this right now. If you can't hear me, let me know, but don't be funny about it. And we've got a guest, as I said. Mr. Mercurio will be here to talk to us about his feelings about JFK. I just want to take one quick minute here to introduce like what we're trying to do. Then I'm going to offer some really quick thoughts, and then I will bring him in here. I'm annoyed because I have his book. Here we are. There it is. So we'll talk about that. A little discombobulated because of all. I literally have. I'll just tell you. I have about 10 windows open. And each window has about 35 to 40 tabs. So this is expert level navigation here. So bear with me. So here's why we're doing this JFK thing. The last episode, what I did was an article about technology and its abuse. But the article is from 2001. And the video that we're sort of jumping off of here is a video of the inauguration of JFK, 1961. So quite old, right? And what I said in the previous videos, I don't like how the modern narrative, everyone, like all of the podcasts are bound to current events in such an ironclad kind of way. And I get it. I understand it. If you're trying to produce a show 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, you need the content. And hey, current events provides plenty of content, but it kind of lets you become a slave to whatever the narrative is. You talk about the things that they want you to talk about. The prism for viewing the world is set by the national conversation. And what I ultimately want to do is I want to sell books. That's kind of like what Gutenbookpress is all about. We're a publisher and a online book selling platform. And they're old ideas, right? They're, as soon as you write a book and you put it out there, it's set in a place and time, and time marches forward, and it's easy to forget about the old ideas. So I'm going to, in this podcast series, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find older content. It could be as recent as even 6 months, but we could end up going way back. We go to the 1800s. I mean, there's plenty of stuff, things that have shaped our reality and shaped our culture that many times we've just really forgotten. And just ask, is it relevant still today? What happened to it? Did it end up going well? Just follow that line of reasoning. And it's sort of a way, in my opinion, to recapture the life of the mind. I'm not bound to whatever is happening in Washington, D.C. today. I can think about whatever I want, whenever I want. that's what I want, and I want others to be able to join me in that. So every time I do this, right now we're going to be doing it about 2 times a week. That's the current goal. We'll bring on some guests whenever possible, and we'll invite them to talk about the thing that we're talking about. And if we end up talking about current events, then so be it. It's not that big of a deal. In fact, for something like what we're talking about today, the inauguration of JFK, it's kind of almost inevitable because we're only less than a week to another inauguration, right? All right, so in just a couple minutes, no more than 9 minutes, looking at my clock here, we will bring Mikey DiMercurio onto the broadcast. But I'm just going to offer my own thoughts about the JFK inauguration. And now, what I wanted to do, I wonder if I thought I had the text all ready to go, the transcript. I do. It's just really, really big right now. So let's see if we can fix that. Oops. Wrong window. Here we go. Move things around a little bit. So, just a little bit of background about myself, I guess. I haven't even said my name. Yeah, I'm such a noob. I'm such a rookie. Holy crap. You don't even know who I am. It's ridiculous. My name is Anthony Horvath. Dr. Anthony Horvath, if you happen to be the kind of person that cares about that sort of thing. I'm an author and a publisher. I have a book that I've written that Mr. DiMercurio is a fan of. I'm not going to talk about my stuff as much. I really want to promote the works of others as much as I can. That is the goal. In fact, this episode brought to you by Sam Packin's 2-book series, Jesse Seed and the Bed of Shield. These are books that I publish. At any rate, I'm not going to get too much into the introduction, but now you know I'm the author, I'm the publisher, I'm the guy, right? So it's interesting to me. I was raised as a liberal Democrat. That was it was where I grew up in the Detroit area. That was just the normal thing, and it probably is in some degree still like that even today, where because it's just such a union area, and it is interesting that today in these times, the unions, although they still favor the Democrats, they still are weighted in that direction. Trump picked up some endorsements, so there is sort of an interesting shift in that regards. But when I grew up in the Detroit area in the 1980s, that wasn't there. You were just a sort of a Democrat leaning person because that was the air that you breathed. And of course, JFK was the lion. I mean, he was the epitome of the best of the Democrats. Well, long story short, you go through just my personal narrative here. The very short answer is 9/11 happened. I realized the world was different than what I had expected it to be. And the real world did not ultimately accommodate my beliefs. And so my views about JFK shifted. And we'll talk about this for another hour. And you don't need to hear it all from me either. But I'm going to say this about JFK because I'm going to criticize some of the things that are in this speech. There, and I will return to this if the opportunity arises. The one thing about JFK, I think he actually was sincere, and that means a lot. I think, I think he really meant the things that he said. He wasn't trying to trick people into having a viewpoint. He wasn't trying to manipulate feelings. I think he He genuinely believed the things that he said. And the people who the Democrats, not to go back on what I said about speaking about current events, but um, the Democrats today who have tried to be that way have ironically been driven out of the Democrat Party. One of the last decent Democrats that I can recall was Joe Lieberman, right? And he was driven out of the Democrat Party and ran and won as an independent, right? Joe Manchin would be another example, and basically he was run out too. Not quite the same thing, but there's just not a lot of room for the JFK style Democrat anymore, and I think that's telling. And I have to, even though I have some things about JFK that um, I don't like about his viewpoints and his perspective now as a conservative, as a libertarian. Really, that's I lean very libertarian. Um, at least he was operating in good faith, and he put his ideas on the table for consideration, and he didn't lie and cheat to try to get them. So those are my opening thoughts about JFK. And it's time now, I think, to bring in Mr. Mercurio. And let me just stare at him here real quick. Hey, are you about ready there, sir? He doesn't even know. We might have a little bit of a lag. Okay. All right. So let's get him going. Oh, let's get rid of that. You got some feedback there. I think you need to turn off the other one, sir. And there you are. Oh, you're so small though.
Okay, the other one's off.
All right. Are you hearing me in real time, do you think?
But I'm not getting any audio.
Not from the live stream. You should hopefully be getting it from the live stream. If you're not, then that's fine. I'll have this other. How's that? Can you go ahead and say something now? Can you hear me now? Yep, I can hear you just fine. See if we were using Zoom or something. This would.
Yeah, not on the video.
But are you hearing me any other way?
On the video tab, I'm just by myself.
Okay, I don't have any way to turn him up the way that I'm doing it right now. Okay, I have an idea. How about you leave your video up? I'm gonna say something. I just said something. Did you hear me say something? That was a dad joke. So I think what we should do is I should give you my phone number and have you call me, and I'll put you on speaker, and we'll have the video going, and I'll have you talking via my phone on speaker. That way, we don't have any lag or anything. So I'm gonna go to X right now, and I'm gonna give you my phone number. If you could call it. We'll see if this works. I guess there's a chance that it's gonna no, that's not gonna work. We're just gonna get feedback. It's gonna come through my microphone. This is already turning into a train wreck. All right. Let's see, what can we do here? Hey. Yeah, well, that was almost inevitable, right? Everyone's watching this live. No, okay, no. So the only way that's going to show is you're only going to see my stream and your stream on the actual stream itself, like the on YouTube. Okay, so, but I think the problem is there's just a little bit of lag. I don't know about you folks, but I need more whiskey already. So this isn't going to work because there's going to be feedback as soon as I put you on speaker. Even though we'll have real time, you're going to come through my microphone and there's going to be feedback. Oh, I got an idea. Hold on just a second. Give me 1 second. Don't hang up. So now the real question is will YouTube let me change the microphone? And it is not. So, gee whiz. Okay, so they can hear you, but not very loudly, and you're kind of on a delay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. I'm not sure why that's a problem. I don't know. It might be a connection speed issue.
Okay, so you're coming through my phone right now. Can people, Supersonic Redhead, is there feedback? Go ahead, Mikey, say something.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. I've got a text from her that says I sound like I'm a million miles away.
Yeah, but she just said that it's better on the YouTube chat.
Okay, good.
So we're basically sharing a microphone right now. Okay, we're good. So don't hang up that phone. Don't hang up the phone. So what's happening right now, just so you know, you're basically broadcasting over the phone into my microphone. Okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Yep. All right. So, okay. Let me get back into stride here a little bit. Are you perchance also looking at the live stream?
I am.
Okay. All right. So we're good to go. Hey folks, we pulled this together. Thank you for hanging in there. This is only the second episode. More whiskey. Okay. So right now what we have is Michael DiMercurio, the author of Dark Transit, Panic Switch, and the author of an upcoming book, the title of which he will not tell us because he's afraid that motherless that guy whose name we shall not mention will come from the grave and steal the title. And I just don't know if we could bear that on X. So welcome to the show, Mikey, how you doing?
Doing good. I have a question for you before we start,
Okay.
which is 9mm or 45 ACP?
Oh no, this is trouble. I don't usually share that information in any kind of public format because then my enemies can prepare.
Yeah, good point.
But but hypothetically, I'm almost exclusively. If I were to be something, I would be almost exclusively 9mm, because of the form factor for concealed carry purposes. Hypothetically.
Hypothetical.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the video here, and actually, the delay is pretty good. The audio and the video is matching up pretty well. So, why don't you go ahead, take a minute or two, and tell us about yourself and what you like to do and who you are, and then as soon as everyone starts getting bored, I'll cut you off.
Very briefly, I was always a writer. I went to Annapolis, majored in mechanical engineering. When I did, the English department bitched me out for not majoring in English literature. But my dad had been a mechanical engineer and said mechanical engineers can do anything. He was actually wrong about that. I went to MIT for grad school. I served a sea tour, a very long sea tour in submarines on the Hammerhead, which is a Cold War winning sub. And we had some very precarious stories from that sea tour. After I left the Navy, I ended up, after teaching a couple of years of engineering thermodynamics, I went to the private sector and built projects. And while I did that, I wrote. And I've written 12 novels that are all trad published. I'm working on the 13th now. It's about 92%. And we haven't really settled on a title of the 13th because there was a little title problem on novel 12, which ended up being called Ambush of the Dragon. And that was largely because my narrator, Joe Courtmonch, indicated that the title I picked out was stupid. So when it comes to titles, I have bad mojo on titles. Tom Clancy stole the title of my novel, Threat Vector. 2 years after Threat Vector was published, he put out a book with the title Threat Vector. And we had the same editor at Penguin Putnam. I called up my editor and said, what the hell's going on? He told me I could not use Vortex because Larry Bond used it. And now that motherless whore Tom Clancy just recycled Threat Vector. What the fuck? Sorry about my language. My editor said, well, he can do that because he's Tom Clancy. Hate that guy. Anyway, that's me.
The best part about that story is that I can tell that you have no bitterness whatsoever. There's no lingering resentments at all.
Nothing. I'm good.
All right, so you had a chance to look at JFK's speech, and the conversation can kind of go wherever it goes. But before I just turn this over to you, because I mean, you were on a nuclear sub, correct?
Right.
Okay, so and by nuclear, I'm not just like nuclear powered. Like you guys had missiles and stuff, right?
Yeah, we had an anti-submarine weapon called the sub-rock, which would come out of the torpedo tube, lift off like a rocket out of the water, and it would detonate a nuclear warhead over our adversary. The trouble with it, it was a suicide weapon. So it was sort of a last resort.
What was the make and model of that? Are you allowed to tell?
You know what? It's probably open source by this time because it has been abandoned. And the main reason it was abandoned because it was a suicide weapon. So nobody really thought that it would ever be employed.
Okay.
It's the weapon of last resort, right? If you're about to die anyway,
Yeah.
you'd launch a sub-rock, but other than that, it's useless.
Okay. So, one of the things that I found interesting about this speech, is that sort of the veiled references to the growing stress of the Cold War, because Russia had demonstrated that they had a nuclear weapon, that they had that capability, and he's right there at the beginning of the Cold War, and you were like in service right in the middle of the Cold War. So I don't know if you want to kind of talk about how you feel about his optimistic attitude in light of your experiences or not, but that was something that came to my mind when I was thinking about you and looking at this speech. So I'll turn it over to you now.
Well, I had a couple of comments about this speech. The first was when I read it. I mean, I absorb information better by reading it and by listening to it. With the exception of audiobooks, information kind of goes in one ear and out the other, as two of my ex-wives would tell you. But when I read it, I get it into my mind. So the first thing I thought when I saw the speech on paper was that it did not sound like Kennedy wrote it. And so I researched that, and it turns out that his speechwriter, Theodore Sorensen, wrote it, and that Kennedy put in a couple of edits. So in a lot of ways, I mean, it's a good speech in some ways and a bad speech in others. But I really wonder whether this is really Kennedy talking to us. But a couple observations. First, it was so much less partisan than today's politics that it's jarring. Today we are so polarized between MAGA and Democrats that, when you listen to Kennedy's speech, you're like, wow, everybody was an American back then. Right? So, the other thing I noticed was that he said that our rights come from the hand of God. And that was a direct quote, the hand of God, not from the government. And when I heard that, I thought to myself, Kennedy's a Republican. The next thing I noticed was that he made some, moves about the Monroe Doctrine, like stay out of our hemisphere, you bad guys. And I like that. I think it was sort of, tactfully said. I think he could have put more force into it, but generally it was okay. The problem I had with Kennedy's speech is he did not directly address communism. He did not directly address the Soviet Union. He just talked in general about, we have the power to eliminate all life on Earth. Oh my goodness. Triggered. Help. What's going on there? Call out the Soviet Union. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Yeah.
And Kennedy did not do that. He was just like, well, we have the power to abolish human life on Earth, so we should, dance together and get along and drink sarsaparilla tea together. Give me a break. Be an anti-communist, for fuck's sake. So then, a lot of the speech was talking about the power to abolish human poverty.
Right.
And there was a lot of stuff in this speech about poverty. And it seems like the speechwriter, Theodore Sorensen, forgot all about that line from the Bible where Jesus himself says, there will always be poor.
Right. Now, not to put you on the spot, but you're not much of a religious man yourself, are you? So, I mean...
I used to be very religious, but I had a near-death experience that kind of changed my philosophy. So, at this point, not really. But of all the religions on the planet, I think the Christians are probably most on track.
Okay. Well, I can already feel another podcast episode coming along. But I had some of the kind of a similar thought. Like he had a twofold drive, like a theme throughout it. It was you know freedom from the concern about nuclear devastation for the earth, and like a war on poverty. And it's interesting that that was 1961, and then his heir LBJ would do his Great Society, which is probably the greatest investment in anti-poverty programs this country has ever seen. Um, Before or since, probably. I'm just sort of thinking real quick, and it's still a thing, right? We've there's no dent in it at all, and it also makes me think about Jesus' statement about how the poor you will have with you always. It's almost like, I would say that this is actually hmm, not this issue per se, but like this would be an example of when I say like the problem with these policies, they don't quite jar with reality. Like the reality is poverty is not just about people being poor. There's just so many aspects to it that that you can't solve with by you could give a poor person, you could give a homeless person $1 billion, and that guy might still be homeless a year later. You know what I mean? What do you think?
If you walk down a street in New York City, you'll run into 5 or 10 or 15 panhandlers, and each one is a uniquely different case. And you can tell when you talk to them, when when you're in proximity, maybe your mind synchronizes with theirs a little bit, and you can tell the people who are down on their luck and genuinely heartbroken from the folks who are just meth addicts or evil, have a gun in their back belt, and are ready to rob you. And I think part of the issue is it's not just poverty, it's violence and criminality. There's so much criminality going on right now in the United States, thanks to Biden importing, millions and millions and millions of illegal aliens, that we've lost our bearings. And we can no longer just look at poverty and homelessness as an isolated issue. We've got to look at it. How is it related to all these illegal aliens?
Yeah, and so here's a quote from JFK's speech. If a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. Which, in retrospect, I mean, I think I don't know. This might be one of those sort of subtle jabs at communism, like kind of what you were referring to, how he doesn't want to necessarily call it out outright, about how, the proletariat rose up and killed the rich. But like, and maybe I digress a little bit, but like, so 1961, that is 60 years ago. And after all that time, we still can't help the many who are poor. So like, that makes me wonder, like, what's the real hang up? Like, you know, I mean, I have some answers to that. So, it's not a complete rhetorical question, but like, I mean, it's interesting that after 60 years, the greatest nation on earth still has a buttload of poor people. And even long before the immigration stuff came in. Yeah, I guess I don't know. You want to bounce off of that? I guess maybe it was just sort of a uh bouncing off
Well,
of what
it's a global problem, Tony. It's a global problem. I spent a year in India where the levels of poverty were so extreme that it would make your head spin compared to what we have here. Probably the closest we have are the tent cities in San Francisco, and people, using the streets as restrooms. And it's going to be like that because, various people are not exposed to education. They're not exposed to good parents. They don't have a good environment. I think the globalists who want to reduce the population by 95% are thinking about people like that. They don't want to help them. They want to kill them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they want to get rid of them unless they can find a way to make them productive in some factory or something.
Exactly. I do have a final comment about the JFK speech, and that is it was very pro United Nations.
Yeah, right.
And from where I sit right now, fuck the United Nations.
He wanted to give, his idea was to give control of all the nuclear weapons in the entire world, whether in the Soviet Union or America, over to control the United Nations. I would ask you what you think about that, but you just told me.
Well, the fact is, if you approach the United Nations, I think that statue is still out front, where they made a sculpture of a revolver with a barrel tied in a knot.
Hmm.
And if that doesn't, as an American, make you want to hate the United Nations, I don't know what will.
Yeah. So that's really kind of a good point in the sense that, like there's this disconnect with reality. There's twofold, right? On the one hand, the idea that, like with poverty, you'll always have the poor with you. You're always going to have the bad person, the criminal, the tyrant with you also. There's always going to be a need for like a use of force. You can't avoid it. It's just because of the way humans are. And if you set up an organization like the United Nations on the premise that maybe if we just condition everyone perfectly, they'll eventually we'll have world peace. You're going to set yourself up for a totalitarianism that no one could ever dream of.
My comment on that, Tony, is that the antidote to tyranny is citizens owning guns. But I note that citizens owning guns did not help at Ruby Ridge, and it did not help at Waco.
Yeah.
When the government comes with overwhelming force, with tanks and mortars and cannons, you're gonna die, right?
Right.
And now the drones are in force. They really do not need to send the ATF out to arrest somebody. They just need to send a suicide drone to approach the house, blast through the windows, and set off an incendiary bomb, and then that whole family is dead.
Yeah. I feel like we need at this moment to point out that neither Mikey nor myself own any firearms. They were lost in an accident and a long time ago, and we abhor even the idea of firearms.
Exactly. They all went overboard in that regrettable boating incident.
That's right.
Very regrettable.
Yeah. So I actually have just a couple more things about this this speech that I would like to talk about. Now, do you happen to know it's a supersonic redhead? Does she want to get involved in this conversation?
Normally she would, but apparently there's some security issues going on globally across the world, and she's read into so many programs that they need her expertise.
Okay.
So she's not going to be with us for a while.
Okay.
But maybe on a future feature we can bring her in, and she's hilarious. Okay. Trust me.
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. Okay, so I'll mention a couple of the other things, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. I have to keep lifting my glasses because I can't read. I can't read with my glasses on. So there was one thing in this speech that I thought was really interesting, and has a modern day uh, connection. He says this. So let us begin anew, remembering on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always subject to proof. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. And what struck me with that was with what's going on with Putin, right? The like Trump has made it pretty clear that he plans on negotiating with Putin. To my knowledge, Biden Biden never negotiated with Putin. Does that sound right? Does that seem right to you?
I don't think Biden ever tried to negotiate with Putin. I don't know that Biden was, you know, ready in a mental sense to negotiate with anybody.
Okay, let me reframe the question because obviously no, Biden was not. The real people who are running the government never tried to reach out to Biden or Putin to come up with uh, some way to resolve the issues. I mean, is that your read of the situation?
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So, I mean, I just thought it was very interesting that that Kennedy back in '61 was like, yeah, I mean, without saying it explicitly, I'll talk to Khrushchev. Yeah, we'll have that conversation, and we know that he did also have back channel conversations. He had a way to get through to Khrushchev with during the Bay of Pigs invasion, for example. What do you think? I actually have no idea where you stand on Putin, Ukraine, and all that stuff. And I'm sure you've put it on X. But I haven't seen it myself. I don't know if you want to go there or not.
You know, my baseline thought on Ukraine is that when the invasion first happened, I was communicating with my children who are, I call the millennials. And I told them that Ukraine is as much a separate country as Maryland is. Okay. It's always been a province of Russia for, thousands of years. And the fact is that the CIA went in there and did a color revolution to unseat a president who was favorable to Russia, who, the citizens elected. And, they put in a comedian. The Zelensky guy is actually a comedian who was on a TV show about, a comedian being a president. And somehow we put that puppet in to Ukraine, and we're all surprised that the Russians are pissed off about it. Yeah. How can we be surprised? Hello, it would be as if Russia put their own puppet into Mexico and turned all their guns on us. Are you serious? Yeah. So I'm sorry. I'm not apologetic. I'm with Putin on this. He needs to take over Ukraine. And I'm shocked that it has taken this long for Russia to invade that country and take it over. I don't know what's going on, but they should have been done in a month.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm with you on a lot of that actually. But like there are parallels, right, with the Cuban Missile Crisis. With not to bring it back to JFK unnecessarily, but that was his view. Like when Russia set up their missiles there and began to reinforce that. I mean, he's like, no, we're not going to do that. And so it is a little interesting and hypocritical that so many Americans and people around the world would be upset with Putin for reacting to almost the same kind of provocation.
Well, I think that the media is at fault for all the propaganda that has demonized Putin.
Yeah. Well.
And
Yeah. Go ahead.
Frankly, they used Russia as an attempt to unseat Trump with the whole Russiagate conspiracy. So, in my mind, I look at Putin with new eyes. Now, for a while, I dated a girl from Belarus who strictly told me, I do not like Vladimir Putin. But at the same time, she was a bit of an idiot.
Well, the thing about, so the thing about that whole situation is, like you mentioned the color revolutions. So what you had was a democratically elected pro-Russian administration there that was undermined by our U.S. intelligence agencies or whoever else was involved in it. And I think it is interesting, like you asked, like, why didn't Putin wrap this up so quick? And just, I don't know how much it really matters to anything, but like, I think he found out that his military was just not as ready to go as he thought. And I think this is a more important point than maybe people would allow at first, because there's a lot of concern that if we don't stop Putin in Ukraine, he's going to march. I mean, I don't know where he's supposed to march to. He's going to march into Poland. He's going to march into Germany or whatever. I mean, he can't even take Kiev. You know what I mean? So he discovered the hard way that his military is not equipped. And then I think there came a point where it became a little bit better, and he gambled on Trump winning. Because he thought that Trump would be a better negotiator for his own interests. What do you think?
I agree. I think a lot of what's going on in Ukraine versus Russia is that everyone's waiting for Trump to take power, and Trump's going to start negotiating with both Russia and Ukraine. And then they have an excuse to say, okay, we're going to have peace because Trump brokered it. And I think that's a good thing. At the end of the day, the Russians are going to take the eastern, 20% of Ukraine as their own territory. And Ukraine will give up a couple of counties to Russia, and otherwise they'll still be an independent country. So it's win-win, really, when you think about it. I'm still shocked that the might of the Russian army was not able to take Ukraine in a month.
Yeah, that was pretty strange. Yeah. I still think about that, but the fact that they were not, I think, is so like I go a couple different directions on this. Like right now Trump is really looking at Greenland. And actually in one of my latest X posts, actually I kind of said I said, because I know liberals, I know how they think, and anything that Trump does is something that they're going to hate. It just doesn't matter what it is. If he brushes his teeth, like they hate him, like, why brush your teeth, you bastard, kind of a thing. But like Trump's point apparently is that Greenland is a matter of national security, strategic importance. And if you look at the globe and you actually rotate it and look, I'm trying to gesture here on the film, you can see actually how close Greenland is to Russia, like in proximity to the United States. I mean, that's a pretty good straight shot. So if you really believe, honestly, genuinely believe that Russia and Putin is an existential threat, then you should be all aboard getting Greenland much more into the orbit of the United States. But if you think Putin is uh, toothless tiger, then you could just go either way on Greenland. But if you really believe is a threat, then we need Greenland. This is kind of a weird tangent, but like I guess what do you think about Greenland in this context?
The whole Greenland idea came out of nowhere and surprised everyone. In my mind, I don't think it has anything to do with national security. I don't know where this is coming from. I think it's a signal. I think we're doing signaling to the Russian Empire and the Chinese that we're a united hemisphere.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we're a united hemisphere, there's Cuba and there's Venezuela. So, where's the rhetoric about Cuba? Where's the rhetoric about Venezuela? Are we invading them, or what's going on? If we're really serious about the Monroe Doctrine, those two countries need to be invaded and knocked over. But nothing's being done about that. Greenland, to me, is a distraction.
Well, I mean, I think I don't know if it's a distraction, but I mean, it might certainly come to nothing like it did the first term. But like, I guess I just don't think it's necessarily arbitrary. Like, for what it's worth, I've done about 10 minutes of research into this, so weigh it as you feel appropriate. But we've actually made several attempts to acquire Greenland for kind of the same kind of reasons, but so I don't necessarily think that it's I see some chat stuff, fireworks. Oh boy, supersonic redhead's coming after you. Do you see that? Oh yeah, you do.
I do, and she's always one to call me out if I'm wrong.
But not that you're saying that you're wrong. I'm sure. Well, it is interesting though. You mentioned the Monroe Doctrine, and we had the Democrats who were all on board with it, right? In 1961, like how it's just crazy how far they've gone. I mean, like I'm almost afraid to ask what you think has gone wrong with them. Maybe I should ask you, did you ever have yourself any kind of positive association with the Democrats at any point in your life?
No. I was brought up as a Nixon Republican, and then I became a Reagan Republican, and then I became a MAGA Trump Republican. Okay. And my entire life, I have seen Democrats as an entire force that wanted to destroy this country and bury the founding fathers. And I don't know why. I've never been able to understand it. I think they are charlatans. I think they are horrible. I think they are trafficking children. I think they are murderous gangs of scum. And that's why I wish I had guns, even though I'm afraid of guns. And I think the police and military should have guns. And even if I had guns, they went overboard in that regrettable boating incident.
Yeah.
Not that I had guns.
Yeah. So, but there are a lot of people who would draw a line in time between JFK, and in the past. Like, they generally have good, like your description and characterization of the Democrats right now is very nefarious. I mean, but I think that many people, maybe even most people, think that the Democrats before JFK, including like Truman and Roosevelt, they were decent chaps, although they were mistaken. But it sounds like you weren't really fond with them either. Is that about right?
Well, I liked Teddy Roosevelt. Great Republican. I actually liked FDR as a World War II fighter. You know, I appreciated Harry Truman because he was so anti-corruption. And he made the great decision to drop a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And he did not listen to all the people who were triggered by, oh my God, it's going to kill people. He literally sat in the White House Oval Office and said, to hell with you guys, we're dropping the atomic bomb. And anybody who doesn't like it can leave this office now. And you got to respect that. As a Democrat, I loved Kennedy. His anti-poverty stuff aside, I thought Kennedy was basically a Republican. But he messed up the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba.
Yeah.
And the military-industrial complex came for him, and he said he was going to disband the CIA, and he pissed off LBJ to the point that Johnson wanted to off him, and that was it. He was done. So the CIA and Vice President Johnson assassinated him, made a patsy out of Oswald, and here we are today with the official story being that Oswald was a lone shooter, even though the Zapruder film clearly showed that JFK got shot from the front. The Warren Commission whitewashed what happened to JFK had on its board Gerald Ford. And what do we know about Gerald Ford?
Oh, right. Yeah.
And the day that Kennedy was assassinated, George H.W. Bush, where was he? He was in Dallas. Does any of this ring a bell from the conspiracy tinfoil hat perspective?
Yeah, not to push back too much, but I've actually been trying to research some of this stuff. What do you happen to recall what the source is for Bush being in Dallas on that day? Because that was something I was going to drill down into myself.
You know, the great thing about modern times is that Elon set up Grok as an AI system, and you can type a simple inquiry into Grok and get a direct answer. Now, is it up to the minute? From my understanding, it has been about 4 or 5 hours behind current events. But, 4 or 5 hours later into the past, it's actually pretty good. So if I type in there, for example, if I type into Grok, where was George H.W. Bush on the day that JFK was killed? Let's see what Grok says.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing.
It has been a subject of controversy and speculation. Here's what's known. Bush claimed he did not recall exactly where he was on that day. How can that be? Everybody I know knows where he was on the day that JFK was killed.
Yeah.
I myself was in a bathtub with a bunch of oatmeal because I got poison ivy, with my mom outside the bathtub asking me if I were okay.
Huh.
So don't tell me you don't know where you were when JFK was killed. He later stated he was in Tyler, Texas at a speaking engagement. And if that's true, show me the video. And I bet you can't. FBI records, conspiracy theories, photographic evidence, public and historical analysis.
Yeah, so
in my mind, George Bush, who was later the CIA director, was integral in the killing of Kennedy.
So you're not gonna I'm not gonna end up getting offed for this segment, am I? Am I gonna end up dying mysteriously because of my platforming you.
Just make sure you set your alarm for 2:50 a.m. and that you're awake at 3, because that's when the bad guys from the federal government come to get you.
Yeah. Well, I it's clear that to me, like, that there's definitely more to the JFK story, and I've been I wouldn't say that I've like been heavily researching it over the years, but I pay attention to things, and if nothing else, it really seems like if you just go back to just one thing, Trump promised to release the JFK files, all of them, and then even after the establishment did their worst with him, right? 2 impeachments, all the lawfare or whatever. He said on his, back, this is like 2020 now. I guess I won't release those files. So there must be some really damning information in those files, and they can't be good.
That people who are mentioned in those files. So the intelligence huge problem with doxing people who are still active. So it has been a lot of years since JFK's assassination, and yet some members of the intelligence community are still out there doing nefarious, evil stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. Like, our CIA is essentially a rogue agency, in my opinion. I don't know. I think you would agree with that.
I have to tell you, I just got a text from Supersonic Redhead to say, use the word allegedly to keep the producers happy.
Along with the boating accident. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so it is interesting too that here we are, we're 60 years, more than 60 years after those events, and we still don't know. We still don't have the definitive answer. I mean, how many years have to go by before all the people who might be impacted by the real information are dead and can't be punished? It's just astonishing to me.
Interestingly, I was watching, or streaming, if you will, the TV series Life on the Street. It's a murder thing, with detectives in the city of Baltimore. And it was from, I don't know, the 90s, maybe the 2000s. It's interesting to watch it because you see things like people smoking in the office.
Right.
And, the level of how they treat women is completely ridiculous. But what I gained from that is that there's this one guy who is convinced that the Abraham Lincoln assassination was a conspiracy theory, and he wanted to follow up on it as a detective. And when you watch that, you're just laughing your ass off. Like, are you serious? 1865, and we're going to follow this now? Hello?
Uh-huh.
I think history is going to look back on the 2020s as the most absurd, crazy decade in all of history.
It's definitely not looking good. I mean, even now, we're only halfway. We're not quite halfway through, right? It's already. We got 5 more years of chaos, and it's going to be like impossible to really to find out the truth, because the mainstream media they're going to be coming out with their narratives, and way too many Americans are going to follow them, and everything that the rest of us believe are going to be called conspiracy theories until 2035. Like there's just no winning in the next 5 years, the way I see it.
Well, if I have a comment on that, it's that I think that in 2035 I'll be long gone, so I don't need to worry.
Okay. What about your millennial children, though?
Well, they're going to have to clean up all this stuff, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna say one last thing about JFK. Then I think that we should talk a little bit more. We should talk about the writing stuff because this is about books ultimately. Um, uh, but just so you know, there is a chat here. Someone says, I doubt there's any. Oh, he's calling you out, is what he's doing. This is somebody who follows you on X. I don't know how you feel about this.
Yeah, Thomas C is one of my best homies.
What just happened?
I was watching a video of a Trump speech when a white cat was vibing. I don't know what the hell happened.
Well, at least you kept your clothes on and everything. So,
yep. So,
all right. So anyway,
so yeah, Thomas C is one of my best homies, and he's always there when I need him.
Okay. So I'm gonna the closing one of the closing lines that JFK made. It's one of his famous ones, and I remember sort of vaguely, because it would have been 40 years ago now that I was such a young one. But I used to like this line, and now it like terrifies me. It's the famous one. It's ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And maybe I'm just like super jaded and everything, but I don't know. That sounds kind of fascist to me. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that was yet another line written by what's his name? Let me pull my notes out here. Theodore Sorensen, that JFK didn't adequately, edit. And in addition to that, that whole stuff about trying to ride on the back of the tiger, but ending up inside it, that's such a cliche. This is a bad speech. The only good part of this speech was about let it go forth from this point that, a new generation of Americans, blah, 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 hardened by war. That was okay. Sucking sucking off, the UN, not calling out the Soviet Union, not calling out communism specifically, going crazy about, oh my God, we have the capability to eliminate all life on Earth. Bullshit. No, you don't. And, we have the capability to eliminate human poverty. Hello. No, you don't. I'm sorry. This was a shitty speech. And Kennedy's good speech was about how we need to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
That was great. It's almost like you're from the area or something.
I love that speech.
Well, so yeah, I guess if I were to continue along this lines, it would be a whole nother hour of conversation. But I see we actually only have about 20 minutes left, according to the schedule at least. So, let's talk about some things that maybe some people never really get to hear about. I mean, we know that you're a submariner on Well, like, what was the era? Like, what years did you serve? Let's start with that.
Can I just start with complimenting you that you pronounced submariner correctly?
Oh, well, I appreciate
My
that.
first captain pointed to his Rolex Submariner and said, "This is a Submariner." And then he pointed to himself and said, "This is a Submariner." And you'd be surprised how few people understand that.
All right. Well, I'll take the compliment, even though it was, yeah. Go. So yeah. So what era did you serve in?
So there we were. The big fear in the 80s was the Soviets putting attack submarines and missile submarines into the Western Atlantic. So we patrolled the Western Atlantic crazily, obsessively, going nuts to try to find the Soviets. And when we found one, it was a Victor-class submarine, and we were within about a ship length away from him, behind him.
Wow.
And, you know, we had trailed him for maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks. And the whole thing was, if he opened a missile tube, he was trailing the USS America Task Force, a gigantic aircraft carrier with all kinds of destroyers and frigates and support ships around it. We were trailing behind him because if he opened a missile tube door, our orders were to sink him. And we did not need any further permission from the White House. It was just, if you're a missile tube door opening, destroy this frickin' guy. So we're running around with 2 open torpedo tube outer doors, 2 torpedoes powered up, 2 torpedoes loaded with fire control solutions, and we're just waiting to kill this guy. So as it turned out, at about 3 in the morning Moscow time, the helmsman in the control room crossed his legs. And when he crossed his legs, his boot hit the engine order telegraph, which is, very much like the old Titanic, double, lever system to tell the engine room to put on whatever speed. But it was a rotary dial thing that would put an arrow into the nuclear control room, which is called maneuvering. And you need to understand that if you're in trail of a Soviet submarine and you get what we call a jump bell, a jump bell is when you go from one engine order to another engine order without skipping over all the engine orders. So if you go from 1/3 to a head flank, that's an emergency. And we all knew that we were in trail of a Soviet submarine. So going from 1/3 to a head flank meant that there was a torpedo in the water and that we were all about to die.
I would take a drink at that moment too.
All because the helmsman crossed his legs and his boot hit the engine order telegraph. So our boat sped up and it knocked the paint off the Soviet submarine. I mean, we crashed into him and we knocked his paint off for about 300 feet. And the noise of it was jarring. You cannot believe what it sounds like when your submarine hits another submarine and pulls its paint off. So we end up about 400 yards ahead of the Soviet. When the officer of the deck calls back to me in the nuclear control room called maneuvering and says, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I said, "I'm answering your fucking engine order. Hello, You rang up a head flank. Officer of the deck looks at the engine order telegraph in the control room and says, "I'll stop." And the helmsman rings up, "I'll stop." And we float to a stop about 600 yards ahead of the Soviet. And we're waiting for him to sail by and shoot him. Because standard operating procedure in the Soviet Navy is that if you have been detected by an American submarine, you need to fire a torpedo immediately.
Huh.
And captains are judged by how long it takes to get a torpedo out of the tube and on the way to the American to sink him. But that night at 3:12 in the morning Moscow time, the sonar supervisor of the watch and the deck officer of that Soviet submarine decided to cover it up. And they steamed on as if nothing had happened. They were whistling because both of them knew that if they confessed to the captain of that submarine that they had been detected and American submarine had collided with them, they would both be in the gulag for 20 years. And let me ask you a question. Would you like to be in the gulag for 20 years if you could lie about what happened on your midwatch?
Fair point. No, I'd say no.
Exactly.
So is that like is that declassified? Can a record of that story be found?
You know, when I had my novel, Voyage of the Devilfish, published, the Pentagon came after me. And they wanted me to go up at the near Navy station and, re-list or whatever you want to call it as an officer in the Navy so that they could make me sign a document that would turn over any royalties I had from any books to the Navy and that would prevent me from publishing anything that spoke about submarine operations. And at that point, they would put me in Leavenworth prison for disclosing information submarine operations.
I'm going to guess that you declined this offer.
You know what I did was I contacted my elected representative, and I told him what was going on, and he called up the Pentagon, told them to cease fire. So one thing that's a lesson learned is your senators and congressmen work for you.
So yeah. So sometimes, and some of them really, like they get so jaded with the process that they actually relish the opportunity to help individual citizens in their districts. The more decent of them. So sounds like maybe you had one of those.
Well, I had a good representative and a good senator, and frankly, that's how I was able to get a firearm. But I own any guns. I'm afraid I don't want the police and military went overboard in a boating incident.
Right.
Not, but my representatives, the F and the FBI, and said, fire, up the bullshit.
Yeah. So, I don't, maybe maybe you didn't answer this on purpose, but like, I asked like when was this? Just tell me if you can't answer it. Like, in my mind, we're talking like 1975 to 1990. That's my impression, but you don't have to confirm or deny if you don't want to.
Well, the Pentagon came after me in about 1993, I think.
Okay.
And 1993 was a very bad year because I had a divorce happening, I had a paternity suit happening.
Okay. So not a good year for tension, is what you're saying. Yeah.
And
So
yet I did some of my best writing in those years. Who can tell?
yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Well. Yeah. So I'm actually kind of impressed. You're going on to your 13th novel, and it seems like you're pumping them out like every 2 years. Is that about right? That's pretty impressive.
Well, it's been 133 days since I finished novel 12, which is Ambush of the Dragon. And the one I'm doing now is 92% complete. So doing 133 days to get to 92% complete is sort of a personal record. But I think part of what is going on is I'm in a race against time against dementia. My medical records are exactly the same as my mother's. And when she hit 75, that woman was smart as a tack. And a year later, she didn't know who I was. So I know that's in my future. And if that's in my future, I want to get my writing out now as fast as I can before, the Joe Biden effect hits me.
Crazy. Well, I don't think I don't know. Have you shared that elsewhere? Like, is this like a new kind of? Is this first that people are hearing about this?
I'm pretty open about this on the X platform.
Okay.
And part of what I want is I want a final exit drug. And I told my doctor, look, I want you to prescribe something for me that off-label can be used as a overdose. And the doctor looked at me like I just stepped off a flying saucer. And I said to him, why do we treat our pets better than we treat human beings? When we have a dog or a cat that is just beyond help and is sick, we take the pet to the doctor, plug the pet into an IV, and then we inject some lethal drugs. Why can't human beings be treated as, humanitarianly as we treat our animals? And the doctor said to me, he sent me an email, and it said, I would be risking my medical license if I told you what drugs you could use to kill yourself. So seriously, when dementia kicks in and I can no longer put together a cogent sentence, I have to take the Hemingway way out and put a shotgun in my mouth. How fucked up is that? Why can't I just get a prescription for one pill that'll do the job?
Well, you that is quite the turn of the conversation, I would have to say. How much time do we have left here? Oh, 5 minutes.
We got to talk about this, bro.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, but maybe not in 5 minutes, but like it does raise a question to me. Like I almost wonder. Like, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I kind of know where you're coming from too. But I feel like if I could have you back as a guest after the dementia sets in, it would be wildly entertaining. So wouldn't that be worth something?
When my mother got to the point that she had no idea who I was, my sister talked about my mother was going to Planet Trafalgar. And Planet Trafalgar was this place where my mom had no idea who she was. She had no idea who my sister was. She had no idea who I was. And she was happy. For the first time in my mother's life, she was happy. So Planet Trafalgar, when you think about it, maybe it's not such a bad place. But, my mom had my sister. And I have the millennials. And I do not think the millennials are up to taking care of me in a memory care state. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this is like opening, like we'd have to go back to, you said you had I think you said a near-death experience, and it moved you away from a belief in God. Is that what you said, or what you meant? Is that kind of? I mean, I don't know if you want to.
That's true. I was extremely religious from a fundamentalist Christian aspect until I had that what do you call it, near-death experience.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot too much, especially if we're going to try to at least make some attempt to try to stay in schedule. Like, not that I'm in a rush. I mean, I've got the house all to myself right now, so that's very rare, and I don't care. We can talk as long as you want, but I don't. I guess what I'm saying is,
we should definitely do a separate session about that. But
okay.
Bottom line on the near-death experience is that the entire near-death experience is the prologue to the novel Dark Transit.
Okay, good to know.
And it's funny because one of the Amazon reviews of Dark Transit was this guy saying, "That would never happen. That is totally not credible. That near-death experience is bullshit." My response was, dude, that actually happened to me, and that is the actual account of what happened.
Huh. Okay. Well, so I have the book now, so I can read it, and then I will have insight into your experience.
Absolutely.
All right. So, yeah, I feel, yeah, this is definitely a larger conversation, but like, I've had conversations with my wife about this, and she understands kind of where I'm at. Like, I do not want to go into a memory home thingamabob. I have no interest in that whatsoever. Just put me out in a cabin where there's like no one's gonna. I'm just gonna be by myself, and that'll be fine, and I'll be happy because I don't really like people anyway. So it works. But
I'm totally okay with that, Tony.
Yeah, but on the other hand, since I have not had a near-death experience the way you described, which I know nothing about yet till I read your book, I don't think my life is my own. So to some degree, I feel like if it's not my own, it's not my own to get rid of either. So I'm kind of in a tension between those two ideas.
Well, my response to that, Tony, is it's totally your own. You are living your own story. You're writing your own book. So in writing your own book, what do you want your end to be? You want to be killed by an illegal alien on an invasion? Do you want to, end up in the hospital in an ICU room for 3 months with tubes and going into your body and monitors beeping and queeping and nurses rustling in and doctors and bullshit? Or do you want to take a single pill with 6 ounces of vodka and have it end? As far as I'm concerned, the black pill is the way to go. I don't want to be in an ICU unit.
Yeah.
When I'm 86. What the fuck is that about? People who are in ICU units at 86. Hello? You're 86.
Yeah,
You're gonna
right.
die. Hello?
Well,
Wake up.
I was kind of hoping that I would die in a burning building carrying somebody out over my shoulder, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
My dad hung on so hard to life, and he was in a hospital room, and they asked him, "Do you want us to do surgery to put in a syringe so we can inject proteins directly into your stomach. And my dad said, yeah, totally. So there my dad is in a hospital room with an oxygen mask, half in and half out of a coma, with a feeding syringe in his stomach. And I said to him when he kind of came out of the coma a little bit, yeah, and he said to me, I need to stay here to, take care of your mom. And then he went back into the coma. And I took my mom aside and I shook her by the collar. And I said, Mom, you need to tell Dad that it's okay to go. Finally, my mom went into my dad's hospital room, told him it was okay to go, kissed him on the forehead, walked out of the room, and within an hour, Dad was gone. I don't want that for myself. What I want for myself is when I can no longer write a cogent sentence, I want to take a pill, go out to the deck, lie down in a chase lounge, look up at the stars, look up at the planets, wash the pill down with some really good bourbon and fade away.
All right. Well, we will definitely have to talk about this. This is exactly the kind of stuff that, these kinds of conversations don't happen if all you're doing is talking about current events all day. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we do have, we will talk about that again sometime. We will definitely have you back. And I'm glad that you're here. We had someone have there's a comment on, in the chat. I don't know if you saw it, from Dayton 937 Dayton. I don't know if you know this person. Talking about Diego Garcia and how Britain wants to give it away. I promised that I'd ask about it. Like, do you have any insight?
I don't. Diego Garcia is a strategic place to, base our naval assets out of. But if it weren't there, it'd be somewhere else,
Okay. Still pretty strategic location, as I recall.
It is, but, Japan's Yokosuka Naval Station is probably more strategic.
Really? I mean, Diego Garcia.
That's right to the action.
Okay, but correct me if I'm wrong, but Diego Garcia is in the Indian Ocean, right?
I think Diego Garcia is in the Pacific.
You're going to make me look it up, aren't you?
That's a great thing about Google Earth. It'll tell you stuff.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll pick it up sometime else. But basically, we have the answer. The answer is you don't know. So
Tony,
yeah.
You need to have me on a lot more so I can, school people.
Yeah, evidently. But like the general plan of this is to have like 3 people on, including myself. So I don't know if you're going to have enough time to school people.
I'm fine with that because when I school people, they learn things and they improve.
Okay. I feel like I should take this opportunity just in case you decide to like take a pill or something. Like, what's the real quick? How did you find Court March?
Oh, I was on a Facebook group in a submarine, friends area, and he showed up and he mentioned that he narrated audiobooks. And so I contacted him and he left, the dude left me a message on an answering machine that was like, hello, this is Joe Courtmarch. I narrate novels. It's like this baritone voice that was amazing. So I hired him to do, the audiobooks of my stuff. And then instead of that baritone, deep, masculine voice, he goes off and does this Richard Simmons, Liberace mispronouncing and lisping, "Oh, we're going to go here and do this." I wanted to kill him.
All right. Well, we'll definitely talk about that again sometime. For sure.
We need to have him on here,
yeah.
so I can give him shit.
Yeah. No doubt. He must. I mean, he knew about this, and he would have messaged me if he was available, and he didn't. So,
he had stuff to do, but the fact is, he's a really great narrator and does amazing things. But occasionally he'll mispronounce something, and I'll gig him on it, and then he gets all pissed off at me that I gigged him on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how pissed off he actually is. I think he's playing along. All right. Well, so your book, just so everyone knows, just to wrap it up. Well, the one you told me to read Dark Transit first, then Panic Switch, right?
Right.
So by that time, your that next book will be out, and after I get done with Panic Switch, you can tell me what the next book to read is. But you're working hard. You'll have another one. When we sign off, and I get this all wrapped up later on this evening, make sure that you send me the links that you want me to put in the description, so that people can find me. Do you want to say a couple final words before I let you go, and then I'll sign it. I'll say my own final words.
My final words are that your book, the Corn Siege, were amazing, and I'm really looking forward to the sequel to it.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to plug my books. I was going to plug everyone else's books, but I appreciate that. Yeah, it's in my head, the stories that are just waiting to be spilled out into the sequel just make me laugh. They just I can just see them in my head, and they just I'm laughing so hard I almost want to cry when I think about them. But they're totally plausible. I guess that's a little bit too much to say, but thank you for that.
If I could contribute a little bit to the plot,
okay.
I'd like to be senators like Adam Schiff. Of course, you're going to give him a different name.
Yeah, right.
And that Hawaiian idiot. If you could show them coming to their natural end, that would be great.
Okay. All right. I'll take that under advisement then. All right. Well, that's Mikey DiMercurio. He's a submariner, and he's got a book. Hope you guys find it. Sometime in the next evening, maybe tomorrow morning, I will update to the description with the links that he gives me. Mikey, thank you for being on tonight. You might just think about this. I mean, this might be the next Joe Rogan show, and you were the first guest. How do you feel about that?
I'm good with that, man.
All right. Okay.
I'm ready to go.
All right. So with that, I'm going to close you down and wrap it up. Thanks for being with me tonight.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye. All right. Well, if you're still here, appreciate it. And of course, if you're watching this later, hope you found that to be an enjoyable experience. I did too. It went in directions that I didn't expect. I'll just sort of bottom line this for you. If so my vision was, to have conversations that go beyond the current events of the day, which I find to be very limiting. And it went the direction that it went because of that. And I think we're going to have a much better. Okay, I mean, the Joe Rogan experience is great, but we can have a different experience that is also good. And I hope that you will spread the word. You'll share it. Next week we will do another 2 episodes. The days are a little bit uncertain, but you can follow me on X and follow the Gutenbookpress X account also. All the links will be in the description. As a final thing, I'm going to say, because we're running just a little bit over time. As a reminder, the unspoken person here is Sam Packin. And let me get rid of my ugly mug here. These books are excellent, very well written. Packin he was a literature professor. This is literature that you're looking at here, and he's been with me and a part of my organization almost from the very beginning, more than 10 years. So I'll make sure that we have links to his books up as well. Your support of him and the people who are on my program will help my program succeed also. So thank you for watching, and I'm not going to belabor it. That's it, folks. We're done. You have a good evening, and thank you for being in the chat also. All right, now how do I? Oh, here we are. End stream. Hasta la vista, baby.